Good evening. Good evening. Shabbat Shalom. We're excited to be here this evening, and we're looking forward to singing and davening together. And hopefully those joining in at home will also come in and begin joining us here in the building as time passes. So tonight is obviously Friday evening, and people are accustomed to a Shabbat service. But there's a slight change this evening, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Not only is it Shabbat, but it's also going to be Sukkot in a matter of moments. And when a Jewish holiday, namely a Yom Tov, not Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is not Yom Tov, but when a Yom Tov coincides with Shabbat, the prayer service for Shabbat is slightly modified. The reason is Shabbos comes every week. But Yom Tov only comes once a year. We only have one Passover. We only have one occasion of Shavuos. We only have one occasion of Sukkot. Well, it's a week long, but you know what I mean. And so when Passover or Shavuot or Sukkot intersect, then the Friday evening service is modified because, in effect, we want to give our due to the holiday. And so we'll begin with Shalom Aleichem because that's traditional, but we skip the Psalms, we skip the Charodim, we go right to the Psalm for Shabbat, then we modify the Amida, and I'll explain why. And I'll explain what else we're doing because it is Sukkot, and Sukkot is a special holiday. So with that, we'll begin with the Shalom Aleichem, which is always a good place to start, a very good place to start, page number 5. My kids don't think so. Thank you very much. It's daddy humor. Thank you. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech, malachei amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchoni l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech, malachei amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech, malachei amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Turning to page 27, the Psalm for Shabbat. Remember, when our services first began thousands of years ago, the earliest part of our worship consisted of Tehillim, psalms, religious song poems. And since this is Shabbos, we're identifying Shabbat through the lens of a religious song poem that in some way characterizes Shabbos. Page 27. Mizmor shir leyom ha-Shabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asor v'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor, mizmor shir leyom ha-Shabbat, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simachthani b'folecha, b'maaseh yadecha aranen, magalo maasecha Adonai meod, amaku machshavo techa. Mizmor shir liyom hashabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. On page 28, the second stanza down on the top of page 28 and following in the English, but we're going to skip the first line of As a Wild Bull and start with You Raised. You raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady. For my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in their God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. Tzadik tamar yifrach, ki erez balvanon yiska, shetulim beveit Adonai, bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu. O Yenovon beseva, Desheni verananim yeyo lahagin, ki ashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlatavom. Please rise the Borchu. Page 39b. Page 39b. Barechu et Adonai hamavorach. Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam voed. And we are seated. Hebrew and English operate under different grammatical rules, syntax, structure, obviously. In Hebrew, this makes sense. Look at the little red arrow on the English side, making day pass. Pretend that's the beginning of a sentence, together. Making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalein olam voed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Central to every evening's prayer is the reminder that love must be, without a doubt, always a part of the universe. Much more than not to be taken for granted, though, but it's always there. That's part of our spiritual posture. Page 40. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amcha havta, Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadita, Al Kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachveinu u'v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nisach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla ve'ahavatecha al tasir mimenu la'olamim Baruch Ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Page 41, the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'yavto et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al vavecha Vishinantam Lavanecha Vidibar Tabam Bishivtecha Bevetecha Uvalechtecha Vaderech Uveshachbecha Uvakumecha Ukishartam Laot Al Yadecha Vihayulet Totafot Beninecha Uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. A few moments of silence, page number 42. Adonai Elohechem emet. And the Michmoch is on page number 44. Michamocha boilim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh, Norati lot osefele Malchutecha ra'uvanecha Bokeh yam lifnei Moshe Zeli anuv yamro Adonai yimloch la'olam va'ed v'ne'emar, ki fadarno et Yaakov, ugalo mi'ar chazak mimeno, baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. On page 45, we have Hashkivenu, and I speak of it often, as you know. And what's striking to me is that when Hashkivenu was first constructed 2,000 years ago, as it's being a very powerful prayer, the element of embrace and of protectiveness and gentle power is expressed through the metaphor of a sukkah. So please look at the very last 3 lines on the English side. This is the translation of Ufro Solenu Sukkat Shlomecha, spread upon us a sukkah of your shalom. Look at the English here. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. And I don't know why the editor used the word canopy, because we all know what the word sukkah is. The Hebrew is sukkah. We're asking God to spread a sukkah of God's shalom. Look at the Hebrew, Sukkat Shlomecha. It's not your sukkah of shalom. It's a sukkah of your shalom. And sukkahs is starting in just a matter of minutes. Imagine in our mind that God is constructing a sukkah of God's own shalom for each and every one of us. What would that do for us? How enveloping and safeguarding it would be. And so I'm adding my own prayer. God, extend that sukkah of your shalom over every person in the world. That's what we need. A sukkah of God's shalom over every person in the world. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the peoples, and over Jerusalem. We all say, Amen. Top of page 46. 46. V'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Beini u'bein b'nei Yisrael oti li'olam, oti li'olam, oti li'olam. V'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et ha'aretz v'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. V'ayom hashvi shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash. V'shamro b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. We just sang a small paragraph from the book of Exodus. It begins with the word vishamru. Shamor means to observe or to guard or to perform. Shabbos is described in a number of places in the Torah, but most famously in the 2 sets of the 10 Commandments. In the book of Exodus, the commandment is it's shamor, which means observe or guard. So the idea of observing or doing Shabbat comes out of the Ten Commandments, and that's why it's here in this little paragraph, which is found in the book of Exodus. And many of us are familiar with it because of this great melody that a very musically talented rabbi named Moshe Rothblum in Los Angeles composed in the early 80s, and it really caught on, and it spread across the country and throughout many synagogues. If you're familiar with the Saturday morning tradition, whether it's in the synagogue or at home, the Saturday morning Kiddush over wine is this little paragraph of Shamru and saying the Borei Pri Hagafen. That's the Saturday morning Kiddush, talking about observing or doing Shabbat. Doing Shabbat. Now look at this little one line here on page number 46. Just below the Vishamru paragraph, you see a little italicized instruction on festivals. And this comes forth from the Torah in Vayikra, Leviticus. And this is if this was just a regular, like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, daytime holiday, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, we say this one line, and say Borei Pri Hagafen, and that's the Kiddush for the day morning service, or just home ritual of having Yom Tov. We don't sing B'Shamru, because that's for Shabbat, Saturday morning. The Kiddush for the daytime part of a Jewish holiday, Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, is one sentence. It's the Vaydaber line. It's interesting. For Saturday morning, the Kiddush, which we're going to sing about tonight, we do Shabbat. For the holiday Kiddush, we talk. Moshe talks. Here it is. Moses proclaimed the festivals of God to the people of Israel. Vaydaber Moshe et Moreh Bnei Israel. That's the Kiddush tomorrow. So tomorrow, because it's Shabbat and Yom Tov, we'll do the Vishamru, this one line, say Hagafen, and we can relax. We're done. Tomorrow that is. Yitkadav, Yitkadav Shemei Rabbah, B'chayechon Uv'yomechon, Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Uv'izman Kariv, V'imero, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, La'olam Yolmei Omaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpar, V'doma V'yinaseh, V'yidhadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudesh Abrechu, Leila Mekabachata V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiran Balma, V'yimeru, Amen. Please look at the very bottom of page number 46. When in doubt, folks, look for the instructions. They're usually found on the pages. When in doubt, we follow the instructions. It's almost like using the instruction manual, which most males don't do. You know, it's just like, right, we get a new piece of equipment, right, John? We just kind of figure it out.
Yeah, to read the instructions.
It's like, why? It's cheating. Why bother? It's not even cheating. It's like, why? It's so unnecessary. We'll just figure it out. It's sitting in front of us. But when it comes to Hebrew, I need a little bit of a reminder. So here we go. So it says, on Shabbat, we continue the meat on the next page, but on festivals, and Sukkot is a festival, we turn to page 306. So if you will, just for a moment, turn to page 306. And tonight's service is a modification because on the one hand, we remember that it's Shabbat, but on the other hand, because Sukkot only comes once a year, we want to give Sukkot her due. And so the service is a little bit more focused on the holiday of Sukkot, and that's why we have here on the top of page 306, the festival Amida. Arvit means evening. Shacharit means morning. Mincha means afternoon. So whatever service you'd be praying, you'd be saying this Amida, whether it's Passover or Shavuot or Sukkot. And obviously page 306 looks very familiar, as does page 307. We're going to skip page 308 because we're at nighttime. You don't do the Kedusha at nighttime. And now we're on page 309. And it says, all continue here. There it is. Fourth bracha, the holiness of the festival. And of course, you can look at the commentary as well if you're so inclined. And here comes the hard part on page 310, but it really shouldn't be hard because all of us can read English. And on the top of page 310, you see this little paragraph. On Pesach, you include this one line, Festival of Matzot, the season of our liberation, or Chag HaMatzot Hazeh Zaman Cherutenu. If it was Shavuot, you'd say the Festival of Shavuot, season of the giving of our Torah, Chag Shavuot Zaman Matan Toratenu. Because it's Sukkot, you say the Festival of Sukkot, season of rejoicing, or Chag Sukkot Zaman Simchatenu. So this is a one-size-fits-all paragraph. Kind of like those screwdrivers that have interchangeable Phillips and other screwdriver bits, right? One size fits all. There it is. And then you're on page, thank you, Lisa. My kids do not think I'm funny. They do not think. And then we're on page 311, and here's the paragraph. And in a way, this is the Kiddush. And you can see that because the last line of the first paragraph in the English says, Adonai, who makes Shabbat, Israel, and the festivals holy, is the word holy. And holy is kadosh. So officially this paragraph is Kiddush, but we're not having wine because we're inside the Amidah. In a few moments when we go to the Sukkah, we'll say Kiddush with wine. So there you have it. This is the integrated Shabbat and holiday Amidah. It's an opportunity for us now to rise in silence, a few moments of silent prayer, the traditional text found here before us from pages 306 to 314, or offering a few moments of our own private reflection. Page 54. Yitkaral v'karash merabo be'alma divchimru amen yehish merabo mevorach l'olam li'ol me'olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbarach v'yitbarach brichu le'elam min kol b'chata v'shirata tishb'chata v'nechmata damru v'mavimeru amen titgabel tzloton b'ton d'chais v'kadam avon d'bishmai v'meru amen yesh v'meru amen v'seshem v'mavu yaseh shalom olein v'kais v'meru amen. I sent out an email and I threw out a teaser. Do we Jews talk about apocalypse? Is there such a thing as an apocalyptic tradition within Judaism? Any ideas? Yes or no? Take a wild guess. You'd say no. We would say, I would think most of us would guess no. But kinda. That's a really good answer, Callie. I think it is a kind of a thing. So I want to introduce you to a very interesting character who is part of our Hebrew tradition. We don't talk about him much. His name is Zechariah. Zechariah. And if you say it like you're from the Deep South, you say, Zechariah. That sounds nice and fun and Southern. But if you say his name in Hebrew, Zechariah, you say, oh, that sounds different. And Zechariah should catch your ears, because what does Zachar mean? What does Zachor mean? Like Yizkar. Zachor means to remember. So Zechariah means either remember God or God remembers. It's very important and powerful symbolism. Zechariah is one of the last prophets in the Hebrew tradition. If you pull a Hebrew Bible off of the shelf and you turn to the book of Nevi'im, prophets, you get to Haggai, next to last, Zechariah, next to last, and Malachi, not Malachi Moore, but Malachi, Malachi is the very last. Zechariah is the next to last prophet, and he lives about the year 500 BCE approximately. Zechariah is in recovery. The entire nation is still trembling with the psychological onslaught of having been forced out of the land of Israel, the majority of the people being destroyed on the battlefield by Babylonia. The temple was destroyed. The small remnant of the Jewish people is a wandering nation and now is in Babylonia. And they have gradually been forced into this vassal status, both in Babylonia and a small remnant here in the land of Judea. And the mindset of the community at that time, especially on the part of Jeremiah, just before Zechariah, is we brought this upon ourselves. Boy, did we deserve it. We drifted away from God. We drifted away from Jewish tradition, and now we've lost the very best part of our lives, living as free people in our own land. The best part of our life is that we can live as independent people, establishing and maintaining our identity and serving our own needs, each householder providing for himself or herself, but worshiping God. That is the very best part of our identity, and we're descended from Abraham and Sarah, and we've lost it. And that continues to reverberate through their minds. And now the large majority, of course, is living in Babylonia, and there are dribs or drabs of people coming back very slowly to the land of, it's not even called Israel anymore. It's called Yehudah, because the northernmost region has been just literally rent asunder, and it's just vacant lots and a lot of broken window panes. And that part of the country isn't even part of the mindset anymore. We're talking about a very small region in the perimeter of the periphery of the city of Jerusalem. It's called Yehudah, and that's frankly why we're called Yehudim, because we're the descendants of those people who in Babylonia want to come back, or those drips and drabs, a few tens of thousands, are living here. We're called Yehudah because there's no Yisrael left. And Zechariah is speaking to the people, and he presents a very convoluted message in the 14 chapters of his book, which make up the Bible, the book of Zechariah and the Bible. And one of the elements that he wants to put forth is, we can't wait to go home. We're going to be free. We're going to rebuild our lives, but it's going to demand loyalty and hard work, and we're going to rebuild the temple. Come on, guys. Let's all come together. We're going to rebuild the temple. And because we're going to rebuild the temple, we're going to be close to God, and we are going to remove this shanda, this sense of shame and scandal that's been contaminating us for the past 50, 60, 70 years. We're going to start all over again. But you got to work with me. You got to work really hard with me. We have to get rid of every vestige of being a second-class citizen, a dependent of Babylonia. We've got to be free, and you all have to join me. You've got to work really, really hard. And in order to show that we're going to get rid of all of this scourge and this defilement of a mind and a body, we've got to rebuild the temple. And that means establishing the priesthood and also establishing, you know what it means, donations and contributions so that we can build the temple and we can operate our economy and our society. Once again, who's with me? You can't say no. That's Zechariah almost in a nutshell. But behind, I read his enthusiastic propaganda message, he's still saying, you can't believe what we've experienced. The whole world has wanted us to be a nothing, and we are this close to being a nothing if we don't get up and build our lives once again. And there's only one way of building our lives once again, going back to the region of Judah and rebuilding the temple and living as free people in Yehudah. And we say thank you to a Persian king, and his name is Darius. And most Jewish people don't know Darius, but we really should know Darius because he's a great guy. He's a very important guy. He stamped our passports. He let us leave Babylonia, Persia, and come home. And in order to remember the name, Darius loved us, wasn't going to marry us, definitely not going to harry us. I made that up all by myself. Okay, anyway, so that's Darius. He's a king. He's a Persian guy, and he's encouraging the Jewish people to come back to the region of Judah. You'll never forget the name Darius now. You get an extra cookie tonight. That's exactly right. They're Persians. And so some are coming back. But here's the strange part. As Zechariah is saying, let's come back, he also reminds us there are going to be people who are not going to be interested in our leaving Persia. There are going to be people who are antagonistic to us. There are going to be people who want us to fail. And the war is going to break out. But God is on our side. And there's going to be a massive war. And I don't know if he studied World War I history or World War II history 2,500 years ago, but in his mind, that is Zechariah, this was going to be the war to end all wars. And God was going to be fighting alongside and for and with the people of Yehudah, and this war to end all wars was going to leave a tremendous amount of devastation across the region. And in one little section, God is described as standing next to Jerusalem with feet planted on a mountain ridge somewhat outside the perimeter of the city of Jerusalem, fighting for and with and alongside the people of Yehudah and anybody who comes across the path to be antagonistic to Jewish people, wiped out smithereens. Who's he fighting? Anybody who comes along and doesn't want the Jews to be living as a free people, living in the promised. So notice, but all the bad guys. And anybody who comes against the Jews is considered a bad guy, and God is going to just destroy them. As for those people that war against Jerusalem, the Lord will smite them with war and also plague, and their flesh shall rot away while they stand on their feet. And the rest of it gets even worse. So I'm going to stop here because in that day a great panic from the Lord shall fall upon everyone, and everyone shall snatch at the hand of the other, and everyone shall raise his hand against everyone else's hand, and Judah shall join the fighting, and all will be fighting in Jerusalem, and the wealth of the nations round about shall be gathered in, and Judah will survive and be satisfied, and the same plague shall strike horses and mules and camels and donkeys. The plague shall affect all the animals in all those camps that have assembled against the people of Judah. And then here's the weird part, even more. All who survive of all those nations that came up against Jerusalem shall make a pilgrimage every year to bow low to God, the Lord of hosts, and to observe the feast of Sukkot. And what Zechariah is saying is that once people the world over realize that God is the true one and only ultimate source of everything, allied with and on behalf of the people of Israel, they are all going to become, in our terminology, monotheists. Not necessarily Jewish, but monotheists, and all the nations of the world, having survived this close to apocalyptic devastation, will pledge loyalty to monotheism, and they'll come to Jerusalem once a year on the holiday of Sukkot, and they'll worship and celebrate God, not as Judeans, but as whatever they might be from their own societies. And Zechariah here is putting forth the message that because the people of Israel are descended from Abraham and Sarah, and having experienced Egypt, with Moses and all the other traditions that you and I know about, have brought monotheism into the world, as people are accepting the reality of the people of Judah and the reality of the message of Torahic monotheism, they've got no choice except the obvious one, to become monotheists themselves from wherever they might be, whichever tradition they might be, whichever identity they might be. And at this point in time, we're not really using the term religion yet, although you could say that is the case. And the fulfillment of an expression of monotheism is to appreciate the holiday of Sukkot. Why Sukkot? Zechariah doesn't go into detail, but I have a theory. The theory is, you and I know the significance of the holiday of Sukkot. It reminds us that when the people of Israel had left Egypt, they were in the wilderness, and they were traveling towards the promised land. And there wasn't a Holiday Inn Express available yet, and they had to make their way through a wilderness with their own effort and strength by building temporary shelters and carrying them with them, but they also, in effect, were believing that God was with them every step of the way. Every step of the way, over a long haul. And I think that's why Sukkot, as a holiday, stands out in the mind of Zechariah. Sukkot is a reminder that people who are on a long, lifelong journey, perhaps, feel God is with them every step of the way. Interestingly, in addition to all that material, it is this passage, which we read as a Haftorah tomorrow, that gives a phrase that most of us know. V'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad, which is the last line of the Aleinu. Someday it will be known there's only one God, and God's name will be one forever. When the Aleinu is compiled, about 1800 years ago, approximately, somebody took one sentence from the Haftorah that we read tomorrow, from the passage of Zechariah, about an apocalyptic element, which in some way kickstarts an awareness of global monotheism, and took that sentence and attached it to Aleinu. And every time you and I sing, recite, say in Aleinu, in effect, we're hopefully bringing our mind back to what Zechariah was calling for. Come on, we're all in this together. We're going to build a promised land, and anybody who threatens us is no longer going to be a threat, and we will be safe and secure, and the world will understand that monotheism is not something to be afraid of, but it's something to be appreciated and revered. That's what's going through our mind every time we say the Aleinu. So, thank you for letting me share a few thoughts. We rise for the Aleinu, page 56, and a moment concluding on page 57. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlochim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yoser haaretz Umoshav Yekaro Bashamayim Mimal Ushchinatu Zo Begav Meromi Hu Eloheinu En Ud Emet Makenu Evezulato Kakatu Bitorato V'yadata hayom v'ashevota el levavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachot enod. Enod. I want to point out one line on the bottom of 57. We've got two lines actually attached to each other. As is written in your Torah, the first phrase, Adonai will reign forever and ever. That comes from the book of Exodus. But then the next line comes from the prophet Zechariah, chapter number 14. And that's, Adonai shall be acknowledged sovereign of all the earth. On that day, Adonai shall be one in the name God of one. So we're really combining two sentences, one from Exodus in the Torah, one from Zechariah. Kakatu b'Toratecha, that's Exodus. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar Zechariah. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai Echad, U'Shemo, U'Shemo, U'Shemo Echad. And now the Mourner's Kaddish on page number 58. And as you know, we keep a calendar, and the calendar is associated with what's mentioned here in our bulletin this week, remembering the following with our love. Sidney Goldrich, Cassili Koppel, Laura Lapkin, Soraya Livitz, Rita Miller, I. Harry Brook, Devorah Mary Yablonsky, Esther Novoselsky, Hyman Bronstein, Sylvia Goldberg, Yetta Lee, Eva Davidoff, Joyce Marcus, Millie Rosenblatt, Max Mishkin, Maurice Chasson, Jacob Perlman, Irving Spindle, Mayor Mitchell, Michael Bronstein, Mary Hoffman, Samuel Prince, Robert Handmaker. Any other names to mention tonight? Perhaps those at home have a name to share as well. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabo homei be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chaye chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'izman kariv v'imeru amen. Yehei shmei rabo mivarach la'olam ul'olmei olmaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramah, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei, dekudesha, b'rechu, la'ela min kol, berchata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'olma, v'yimeru, amen. Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Oleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Seh Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Oleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May we all gain a sense of peace. May we all be supported. May we share love and hope. Turning to page 59, the psalm that's associated with this season of the year. And there are a number of reasons why I think this psalm is associated with this year. We started before Rosh Hashanah. We continue all the way through Rosh Hashanah for a month. And Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and on until the end. We stopped saying this just before Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. And look at the little red transliteration on the facing page, page number 59. And there's one sentence there. It's 3 lines. And I think that may be another reason why we read this psalm at this season of the year. It's a word play off of the word sukkah in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's ki yitzpeneni besukkah b'yom ra'ah. On the English, in a time of calamity, you would hide me in your sukkah, enfold me in the secret recesses of your tent, and you raise me up to a stronghold. And think about it. In a time of calamity, do you and I want to be in NORAD underneath 4,000 tons of concrete and steel and ultra deluxe safeguards, or do you want to be hiding behind a tent wall which is about 1 micron thick? I think you and I would typically say, let's stand within a highly fortified structure. In time of calamity, you would hide me in your sukkah, enfold me in the secret recesses of your tent. If you and I don't know if I can be there, if you and I could be in a mindset where we're that closely connected to the one true everything, if we're really that closely connected to the one true everything, then the idea of being close and enwrapped in just a thin little wall of fabric that the one true ultimate builds for you and me, that's a hope. And that's reassurance. Achat sha'alti meit Adonai ota avakish. Achat sha'alti meit Adonai ota avakish. Shivti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai. Lachazot bin Noam Adonai ulavaker behechalo. Lachazot bin Noam Adonai ulavaker behechalo. Good Shabbos. Happy Yom Tov. Please take your Seder with us. Help yourselves to wine and juice and challah. And we're excited Callie made us a challah as well. And then we're going to have a nash in the sukkah. But it's a slightly complicated kiddush. That's why you need your Seder with you as we go outside for kiddush. So pour yourself a wine or a juice. We'll make kiddush. Then you'll have time for a little bit of a nash in the sukkah. Thank you.